My heart pounded like a drum in a thunderstorm, each beat threatening to crack my ribs. I stood in our cramped Brooklyn apartment, the smell of burnt toast lingering from breakfast, staring at Jake, my roommate, my best friend, the guy who'd never once questioned my quiet nights alone. "I'm gay," I blurted, the words slicing through the air like a blade. Raw and reckless. No turning back. It wasn't planned. We were just sitting there. Post-dinner. Empty pizza boxes strewn across the coffee table. The TV droning some mindless reality show. Jake, all 6'2" of him, sprawled on the couch, his flannel shirt unbuttoned just enough to show the edge of his collarbone, laughed at something on the screen. His laugh, deep, unguarded, always hit me like a wave, stirring something I'd buried for years. I don't know why I chose that moment. Maybe it was the beer. Maybe it was the way his blue eyes caught the lamplight. Or maybe I was just tired of carrying the weight of a secret that felt like a second skin. Jake's laugh stopped. He turned, one eyebrow raised, his usual cocky grin replaced by something unreadable. "Wait. What?" he said, sitting up, his voice low, like he was testing the words for truth. I froze, my throat tightening. I'd known Jake since freshman year at NYU for years of late-night talks, shared ramen, and his endless parade of short-lived girlfriends. He was the straightest guy I knew, the kind who'd charm a room without trying, who'd never once made me feel less for being me. But this was a gamble I hadn't calculated. "You're serious?" he asked, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. His gaze pinned me, not accusing, but searching, like he was seeing me for the first time. I nodded, my mouth dry, the confession hanging between us like smoke. "Since when?" he pressed, not breaking eye contact. I wanted to bolt, to laugh it off, to say it was a joke. But I didn't. "Always," I said, barely above a whisper. "I just never told you." The silence that followed was deafening. The hum of the city outside, car horns, distant sirens, felt like it belonged to another world. Jake ran a hand through his dark hair, his jaw working like he was chewing on something tough. Then, out of nowhere, he smirked. "Prove it," he said, his voice laced with a challenge. A dare, like we were back in college betting on who could chug a beer faster. My stomach flipped. "What?" I stammered, caught off guard. His smirk widened, but his eyes stayed soft. "Curious." "You heard me, Ethan. Prove it." I laughed, nervous, thinking he was messing with me. But he didn't back down. He leaned closer, the space between us shrinking, his breath warm and tinged with the faint bitterness of beer. "I'm not saying I don't believe you," he said, his tone shifting. "Serious now. But you've been my roommate for years. Man, you've never even mentioned a guy. Show me it's real." His words weren't cruel, but they stung, like he was testing the edges of my truth. I felt exposed, raw, like a nerve laid bare. And yet, something in his gaze, something daring, almost inviting, made my pulse race for a different reason. "Jake, I started. But he cut me off, standing now, towering over me. "Come on, Ethan. You're not scared, are you?" His voice was playful, but there was an edge, a spark I'd never heard before. My mind spun. Was this a game to him? A test? Or something else entirely? I stood, meeting his height, my heart hammering. "Fine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But don't say I didn't warn you." That night, everything shifted. I didn't know it then, but that dare, those two words, prove it, would unravel everything we thought we knew about each other. I took a step closer, close enough to feel the heat of his body, close enough to see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. You sure about this? I asked, my voice low, almost a challenge of my own. He didn't answer, just held my gaze. And in that moment, the world outside our apartment ceased to exist. We stood there, inches apart, the air thick with something neither of us could name. I could have backed off, laughed it away, kept the secret tucked safely back in its box. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned in, my lips brushing his not a kiss. Not yet. Just a test. A question. His breath hitched. And for a split second, I thought he'd pull away. He didn't. His hand found my arm, gripping it like an anchor. And then he kissed me back hard. Unexpected. Like he was proving something too. The kiss lasted seconds. Maybe less. But it felt like a lifetime. When we pulled apart, his eyes were wide, his chest rising and falling fast. Holy shit, he whispered. And I couldn't tell if it was shock, regret, or something else entirely. My own heart was a runaway train, crashing through every wall I'd built. You wanted proof, I said, my voice shaking but defiant. He didn't speak, just stared. And in that silence, I knew nothing would ever be the same. What had I done? What had we done? The apartment, once a safe haven, felt like a stage where the script had been torn apart. Jake sank back onto the couch, running both hands through his hair, his face a mix of confusion and something I couldn't read. Ethan. He started, then stopped, like the words were stuck. I wanted to fill the silence, to explain, to apologize. But I didn't. I just stood there, waiting, my whole world hanging on what he'd say next. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, as Jake's unfinished sentence hung in the air. I could still feel the ghost of his lips on mine, the roughness of his stubble, the way his grip on my arm had tightened like he was afraid I'd vanish. My pulse hadn't slowed, and the apartment tower cluttered. Familiar space felt alien, like we'd stepped into a parallel universe where the rules didn't apply. Jake finally spoke, his voice low, almost a growl. That wasn't. I didn't expect that. He looked at me, his blue eyes stormy, searching for something I wasn't sure I could give. I wanted to ask what he meant, but my throat felt sealed shut. Instead, I sat on the arm of the couch, keeping distance between us, my hands gripping my knees to stop them from shaking. You dared me, I said, trying to keep my tone light. But it came out raw, vulnerable. I proved it. He let out a short, sharp laugh. Not cruel, but unsteady, like he was trying to find his footing. Yeah, you did. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his fingers tapping restlessly against the couch. I don't know what I thought you'd do, Ethan. Not that. His words weren't accusing, but they carried weight, like he was piecing together a puzzle with missing edges. I wanted to ask what he was feeling, Hal. I wanted to know what I was feeling, but the air felt too fragile, like one wrong word would shatter it. I didn't mean to freak you out, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. I've been carrying this for so long, and you're the first person I've told. That was true. My parents, back in Ohio, thought I was just focused on my career. My coworkers at the graphic design firm knew me as the quiet guy who dodged happy hour invites. Jake was the only one who'd ever gotten close, who'd seen me laugh until I couldn't breathe, who'd stayed up with me until 3 a.m., talking about nothing and everything. And now I'd gone and blown it all up. You didn't freak me out, he said, too quickly, like he was convincing himself. He sat up, his gaze locking onto mine again. Intense, unyielding. I don't know what this means. For us. For you. He paused, then added, softer. For me. That last part hit like a punch. For him. My mind raced, trying to decode it. Was he confused? Angry? Or was there something else? Something I was too scared to hope for. Before I could respond, he stood, pacing the small living room, his boots scuffing the worn hardwood. Look, Ethan, you're my best friend. You know that, right? He stopped, facing me, his expression raw, unguarded. I don't care that you're gay. I mean, I care, but not like. It doesn't change anything. Or, shit, maybe it does. He ran a hand over his face. Frustrated. I'm not saying this right. My chest tightened, a mix of relief and dread. You don't have to say anything, I said, standing too, needing to move, to burn off the energy buzzing through me. I shouldn't have. I mean, the kiss. That was too far. I was backtracking, trying to rebuild the walls I'd just torn down. But Jake shook his head. Don't do that, he said, stepping closer, his voice firm. Don't take it back. You meant it, didn't you? His eyes searched mine, and I felt exposed again, like he could see every doubt, every fear, every stupid hope I'd buried. I nodded, unable to lie. Yeah, I said. I meant it. He exhaled, long and slow, like he'd been holding his breath. Okay, he said, and that one word felt like a lifeline. Okay. He didn't move closer, but he didn't back away either. We stood there, caught in a strange, electric stalemate, the city's hum filling the silence. I wanted to ask what okay meant, but before I could, his phone buzzed on the coffee table, shattering the moment. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. It's Sarah, he said, his voice flat. Sarah is on again. Off again girlfriend. The one who'd been texting him nonstop for weeks. My stomach sank. Reality was creeping back in, reminding me of the lines we just blurred. He didn't pick up, but the mood shifted, the air growing heavy again. He started, gesturing vaguely toward his room. Yeah, I said, my voice hollow. Me too. I turned toward my own room, my heart still racing, the taste of him still lingering. As I closed my door, I heard his footsteps pause, then continue, the soft click of his door shutting like a full stop on the night. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second the dare, the kiss, the way his eyes had held mine. What did it mean? Was it just a moment? A fluke? Or had something deeper shifted? I didn't sleep that night, my mind caught in a loop of questions without answers. All I knew was that I'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. Jake, my straight roommate, my best friend, had dared me to prove who I was. And now, I wasn't the only one proving something. Morning light filtered through the blinds, painting stripes across my bedroom floor. But it did nothing to ease the knot in my chest. I hadn't slept. My mind tangled in the memory of Jake's lips, his grip, the way his okay had felt like both a promise and a question. I lay there, listening for sounds from his room, half expecting him to barge in and say it was all a mistake, half hoping he wouldn't. The apartment was quiet when I finally dragged myself out of bed. Jake's door was closed. No sign of him in the kitchen or living room. The pizza boxes from last night still littered the coffee table, a reminder of how normal things had been just hours ago. I made coffee, the routine grounding me, but every creak of the floorboards made my heart jump, anticipating him. When his door finally opened, I nearly spilled my mug. Morning, he said, his voice rough, like he hadn't slept either. He was in a faded t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair a mess, his eyes avoiding mine as he grabbed a mug from the cabinet. The air felt charged, like we were both tiptoeing around a landmine. Sleep okay? He asked, casual, but his shoulders were tense. Not really, I admitted, leaning against the counter, clutching my coffee like a shield. You? He shrugged, pouring coffee, his movements deliberate. Same. He didn't elaborate. And I didn't push. We stood there, sipping in silence, the weight of last night pressing down like a physical thing. I wanted to ask what he was thinking, if he regretted it, if he felt anything close to the storm raging inside me. But I didn't. I was too scared of the answer. He broke the silence first. So, what now? His voice was low, careful, like he was testing the waters. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the same uncertainty I felt mirrored in his eyes. It wasn't just whatever had happened last night had shaken him too. I don't know, I said honestly. I didn't exactly plan this. He nodded, setting his mug down, his fingers lingering on the handle. Me neither. He hesitated, then added, I'm not. I've never thought about guys like that. Never had to. His words weren't harsh, but they stung. A reminder of the gap between us. He was straight. I wasn't. And yet, he'd kissed me back. That wasn't nothing. I get it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You don't have to. Figure it out right now. Or ever. I meant it. But it hurt to say, like I was letting go of something I'd only just started to grasp. He looked at me then, his gaze intense, like he was trying to read something written in a language he didn't understand. Ethan, I don't want this to screw us up, he said. You're important to me. My throat tightened. You're important to me too, I said, the words feeling small compared to the ache in my chest. But I don't know how to do this. I've never told anyone before. And now, I trailed off, unsure how to finish. Now what? Now we'd kissed. Now I couldn't stop thinking about him. Now I was terrified of losing him. He stepped closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could smell his shampoo. The same cedar-scented one he'd used for years. Let's just take it slow, he said, his voice soft but firm. No pressure. No dares. He smiled. A small, crooked thing that made my heart twist. I nodded, relief mixing with disappointment. Slow was safe, but it wasn't what I wanted. Not really. The rest of the day passed in a strange, careful dance. We cleaned the apartment, watched a movie, ordered takeout normal things. But every glance, every brush of shoulders felt loaded. I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. His expression unreadable. And I wondered, not for the first time, what was going on in his head? Was he just processing? Or was he feeling something too? Something he didn't know how to name. That night, I went to a gay bar for the first time. Not because I wanted to meet someone, but because I needed to feel like I wasn't alone. Like there was a world where I could be myself without fear. The place was loud, crowded, alive with energy guys laughing, dancing, holding hands without hesitation. I stood at the bar, nursing a drink, watching it all, and felt a pang of envy. They seemed so free, so sure. I wanted that. But all I could think about was Jake, waiting back at the apartment, and the way his kiss had felt like a door opening to a room I didn't know existed. When I got home, he was still up, sprawled on the couch, a beer in hand. Have fun, he asked, his tone light but his eyes sharp. I shrugged, not ready to share the whirlwind in my head. It was fine, I said, sitting beside him, close but not too close. He didn't push, just handed me a beer. And we sat there, the TV flickering, the silence between us saying more than words ever could. The next week was a tightrope walk. Jake and I moved through our routines work. Meals, late-night Netflix binges, but every moment carried an undercurrent. A hum of something unspoken. I'd catch him staring, his brow furrowed like he was solving a math problem, only to look away when I met his eyes. My own thoughts were a mess, swinging between hope and fear, replaying that kiss like a song stuck on repeat. Work was my escape. I threw myself into designing logos for a new client, losing hours in Photoshop, the pixel-perfect lines a stark contrast to the chaos in my head. But even there, Jake crept in, his laugh echoing in my memory, the way his hand had felt on my arm. I'd never been in love before. Not really. But this felt dangerously close. And it terrified me. He was straight. He had Sarah. He was my best friend. And yet, that night had cracked something open, and I couldn't seal it shut. Friday night. He came home late, his flannel shirt wrinkled, his eyes tired. Rough day? I asked, tossing him a beer from the fridge. He caught it, nodding, and collapsed onto the couch beside me. Yeah. Sarah's pissed again. My stomach twisted at her name, but I kept my face neutral. What happened? I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. He sighed, cracking open the beer. She thinks I'm distracted. Says I'm not present. He made air quotes, his tone mocking. But there was guilt there too. I wanted to ask if it was because of me, because of us. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "You okay?" He looked at me, his gaze heavy. And for a moment, I thought he'd say something real, something that would change everything again. But he just shrugged. Yeah, just need to figure shit out. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the bar, the freedom I'd glimpsed, and how it felt so far from the life I was living. I wanted to be brave, to own who I was. But every step toward that felt like a step away from Jake. And I didn't know if I could do that. Not yet. The next morning, he was different, quieter, almost gentle. He made pancakes, a rare occurrence, and we ate in silence. The clink of forks against plates the only sound. You ever think about leaving? He asked suddenly, his voice low. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. What? Like? The apartment? I asked, my heart racing. He shook his head. No. Like New York. Starting over somewhere else. I frowned, trying to read him. Sometimes, I said, but this is home. You're here. The last part slipped out before I could stop it, and his eyes snapped to mine. Wide. Searching. Yeah. He said softly. You're here too. My chest ached, the words carrying more weight than they should. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Weak but real. Guess we're stuck with each other. He laughed. And for a moment, it was like before, easy. Familiar. But then his phone buzzed. Sarah's name flashing on the screen. And the moment broke. He didn't answer. But the air shifted, the weight of her presence settling between us. I stood, clearing my plate, needing to move. I'm heading out for a bit, I said, grabbing my jacket. He nodded, but his eyes followed me, and I felt them long after I left. I wandered Brooklyn, the autumn air crisp, leaves crunching under my boots. I ended up at a park, watching kids play, couples walk hand in hand, and I wondered what it would be like to have Thado be open, to love without fear. I thought of Jake, of the way he'd looked at me that morning, and I wondered if he was as lost as I was. When I got back, he was gone. A note on the fridge, meeting Sarah. Be back later. My heart sank, but I pushed it down. He wasn't mine. He never had been. That night, I went back to the bar, needing the noise, the distraction. I met a guy, Matt, mid-20s, with a warm smile and easy confidence. We talked, laughed, and for a moment, I felt lighter. like I could be someone else. Someone who didn't carry a secret crush on his straight roommate. But when he leaned in, offering a kiss, I pulled back. I couldn't do it. Not when Jake's face was still burned into my mind. I got home late. The apartment dark except for a sliver of light under Jake's door. I stood outside it. My hand raised to knock. But I didn't. Instead, I went to bed, the ache in my chest heavier than ever. Whatever was happening between us, it wasn't simple, and I didn't know if it ever would be. The next few days were a blur of avoidance. Jake was out more, with Sarah or at work, and I buried myself in deadlines, sketching designs until my eyes burned. We still talked, still shared coffee or takeout, but it was surface level, like we were both afraid to dig deeper. I hated the distance, the pretending, but I didn't know how to fix it without risking everything. One night, I came home to find him on the couch, alone, no Sarah in sight. He was watching some old sci-fi movie, the glow of the TV casting shadows across his face. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag by the door. He looked up, his expression softer than it had been in days. "Hey. Long day." I nodded, sitting beside him, leaving a careful gap between us. "Yeah. You." He shrugged, his eyes on the screen, but not really watching. "Sarah and I broke up," he said, so casually it took me a second to register. My heart stuttered. "What? When?" He glanced at me, his jaw tight. "Today. It's been coming for a while. We weren't. It wasn't working." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't push. But the air felt different. Lighter, like a weight had lifted. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. He shook his head. "Don't be. It's better this way." He paused, then added, "She said I've been different. Distant. And she's not wrong." His eyes met mine, and there it was again at spark. That question. My pulse quickened. "Different how?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped tight. "I don't know, man. Ever since that night, I can't stop thinking about it. About you." My breath caught, the world narrowing to the space between us. "What does that mean?" I asked, afraid of the answer, but needing it more than anything. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood, pacing again, his restlessness filling the room. "I'm not gay, Ethan," he said, his voice firm but not harsh. "I've never looked at a guy that way. But you." He stopped, facing me, his eyes raw. "You're different. You're you." And that kiss, it fucked me up. He laughed, a shaky sound. "I don't know what I'm saying." I stood, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "You don't have to know," I said, stepping closer, close enough to feel the heat of him. "But you're not the only one who's fucked up." My voice cracked, and I didn't care. I was done hiding. "I've been in love with you for years, Jake. And I know you're straight. I know it's impossible, but I can't keep pretending it's not there." His eyes widened, shock and something else, something warm flashing across his face. "Love," he repeated, like the word was foreign. I nodded, my chest tight, ready for rejection, ready for the end. But he didn't pull away. Instead, he stepped closer, his hand reaching out, hesitating, then resting on my shoulder. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "I don't know what this is, but I don't want to lose you." The words hit like a tidal wave, washing away the fear, if only for a moment. I reached up, covering his hand with mine, feeling the calluses on his fingers, the warmth of his skin. "You won't," I said, and I meant it. We stood there, frozen, the world holding its breath. Then, Slowly, he leaned in, his forehead resting against mine, his breath warm against my lips. It wasn't a kiss, but it was close, intimate in a way that felt more real than anything before. We didn't move for a long time, just stood there, breathing together, the weight of our confessions settling around us. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were bright, conflicted but not afraid. "I need time," he said, his voice soft. "Is that okay?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Time was something I could give him. Time was something we had. That night, we didn't talk about it again. We watched the rest of the movie, shoulder to shoulder, the gap between us gone. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Whatever this was, friendship, love, something in between, it was ours. And it was enough for now. Time didn't make things clearer, it made them messier. Jake and I fell into a new rhythm, one where we were more than roommates, but not quite anything else. We'd sit closer on the couch, our knees brushing, our laughs lingering a little longer. But we didn't talk about it, didn't name it. And that unspoken tension grew like a storm cloud, heavy and inevitable. I started going to the bar more, not to meet anyone, but to understand myself. I met others like Megwes who'd come out, who'd loved and lost. Their stories grounded me, gave me courage, but they also made me ache for Jake, for the possibility of something I still wasn't sure he could give. He'd asked for time, and I was trying, but every day felt like a test of patience I didn't know I had. One night, I came home to find him cooking, actual cooking, not just heating up leftovers. The kitchen smelled of garlic and basil, and he was stirring a pot of pasta sauce. His sleeves rolled up, a smudge of flour on his cheek. "What's this?" I asked, leaning against the doorway, trying not to smile too wide. He grinned, sheepish. "Figured we deserved a real meal. You in?" We ate at the table, not the couch, a bottle of cheap wine between us. It felt like a date, or what I imagined a date would feel like, and the thought made my chest tight. We talked about everything: work, movies, the time we got lost hiking in the Catskills, everything but us. Until he set his fork down, his eyes serious. "Ethan, I've been thinking," he said, and my heart stopped. "About what you said. About love." I froze, my fork hovering over my plate. "Yeah," I managed, my voice barely there. He leaned forward, his hands clasped, his gaze steady. "I don't know if I'm like you," he said, "but I know I feel something for you. And it's not just friendship." My breath caught, hope and fear colliding. "What are you saying?" I asked, needing him to spell it out. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I'm saying I'm confused as hell, but I don't want to ignore this. I want to figure it out. With you." His words were a lifeline, pulling me from the edge of doubt. But they were also a challenge. Figure it out. Together. It was more than I'd hoped for. But it wasn't a promise. Not yet. We didn't kiss that night. Didn't touch. But we sat there until the wine was gone. Talking. Laughing. Letting the walls between us crumble a little more. When I went to bed, I felt lighter. Like the world had tilted back into place. But the next day, reality hit hard. I got a call from my mom, her voice tight with worry. "Ethan, your dad's sick. You should come home." The news shook me. My dad, stoic, stubborn, the man who'd never once asked about my personal life, was in the hospital. A heart condition they hadn't caught in time. I told Jake, my voice shaking, and he didn't hesitate. "I'm coming with you," he said, already grabbing his jacket. I started to protest, but he cut me off. "You're not doing this alone." The drive to Ohio was long, quiet, the radio filling the gaps. Jake drove, his hand resting on the gear shift, close enough that I could feel the warmth of it. I stared out the window, my mind a mess of worry for my dad and gratitude for Jake. When we stopped at a gas station, he reached over, squeezing my hand. Quick but firm. "We'll get through this," he said, and I believed him. At the hospital, my mom hugged me tight, her eyes red. My dad was stable, but weak, his face pale against the white sheets. Jake stayed by my side, charming my mom, making my dad laugh despite the tubes and monitors. Seeing him there, fitting so easily into my family, made my heart ache in a new way. He wasn't just my roommate anymore. He was something more, something I didn't dare name. That night, in the hotel room we shared, I couldn't sleep. Jake was in the bed next to mine, his breathing steady, and I watched the rise and fall of his chest, feeling like I was standing on the edge of something vast. I didn't know what was coming for my dad, for us, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to find out. Ohio was a blur of hospital visits and tense family dinners. My dad improved, slowly, his gruff humor returning. But the scare had shifted something in me. I'd spent years hiding who I was from my parents, from myself. And now, with Jake by my side, that secrecy felt heavier than ever. He was a rock making coffee runs, joking with my mom, even helping my dad with his crossword puzzles. But every night, in our shared hotel room, the unspoken tension between us grew. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, we walked back to the hotel under a sky bruised with clouds. The air was thick with the promise of rain, and Jake was quiet, his hands shoved in his pockets. "You okay?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. He glanced at me, his eyes soft but troubled. "Yeah, just thinking about you. About this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing everythingus. The hospital, the weight of it all. "What about it?" I asked, my heart racing. We stopped under a street lamp, the light casting long shadows. He exhaled, his breath visible in the chilly air. "I've never done this," he said. "Cared about someone like this. Not Sarah. Not anyone. It's intense." His voice was raw, unguarded, and it hit me like a wave. I stepped closer, my hands trembling. "Jake, you don't have to. I want to." He cut in, his voice firm. "I don't know what I'm doing, Ethan, but I know I want to be here. With you." My chest tightened, hope and fear tangling together. Before I could respond, he closed the distance, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was soft, deliberate, nothing like the dare from that first night. This was real, a choice, and it stole my breath. We pulled apart, his forehead resting against mine, our breaths mingling in the cold. "I'm scared," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "Me too," I said, and we laughed, the sound shaky but real. The rain started then, soft at first, then heavier, and we ran back to the hotel, soaked and laughing, our hands brushing as we moved. Back in the room, we didn't talk about the kiss, but we didn't need to. We lay in our separate beds, the silence warm, charged with possibility. I fell asleep to the sound of his breathing, feeling like we'd crossed a threshold, even if I didn't know where it led. When we returned to Brooklyn, my dad was stable, and I carried a new resolve. I wanted to live honestly, not just for Jake, but for myself. I started small, coming out to a coworker, then a friend from college. Each confession felt like shedding a layer of armor, leaving me lighter but vulnerable. Jake watched it all, his support quiet but unwavering. He'd touch my arm, smile in that crooked way of his, and I'd feel like I could do anything. But the world wasn't always kind. One night at the bar, I overheard a group of guys mocking a couple holding hands. their words sharp and cruel. It hit me hard, a reminder of why I'd stayed hidden for so long. When I told Jake, his face darkened, his hands clenching. "Fuck those guys," he said, his voice low. "You're braver than they'll ever be." His anger, his protectiveness, made my heart swell. But it also scared me. What were we doing? Could this whatever it was survive in a world that wasn't always ready for it? We started spending more time together. Not as roommates, but as something undefined. Walks in the park. Late-night talks. Moments where our hands would linger. Our eyes locking. But he still hadn't called it anything. And I didn't push. I wanted him to come to it on his own. To choose it. Not feel forced. And yet, the waiting was agony. Each day a mix of hope and doubt. One night, he came home late. His eyes bright. A little drunk. I told my brother. He said, slumping onto the couch beside me. About us. My heart stopped. Us. I echoed, my voice shaking. He nodded. His grin sloppy but genuine. "Yeah," said, "I'm figuring it out." "But you're it, Ethan." My breath caught, tears prickling my eyes. I didn't know what it meant, but it was enough. For now, it was enough. Winter came to Brooklyn. The city draped in gray, the air sharp with cold. Jake and I were closer than ever, but still undefined. A fragile thing we both guarded. We'd kiss sometimes, soft and tentative, or fierce and desperate, but we never pushed further, never named it. It was like we were both afraid to break the spell, to make it real and risk losing it. I came out to my parents over Christmas, a phone call that left me shaking but free. My mom cried. My dad was quiet, but they didn't reject me. "We just want you happy," my mom said, and I clung to those words like a lifeline. Jake was there when I hung up, his hand on my back, his presence steady. "Proud of you," he said, and I felt like I could fly. But the world kept testing us. At work, a colleague made a snide comment about the gay agenda, not knowing I was listening. I brushed it off, but it lingered, a reminder of the hate that simmered just beneath the surface. Jake saw it in my face when I got home, and he pulled me into a hug, fierce and unyielding. "You're enough," he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "You're more than enough." Spring brought change. Jake got a job offer in Seattle, a tech startup that wanted his coding skills. He told me over dinner, his eyes avoiding mine. "It's a good opportunity," he said, but his voice was hollow. I felt the ground shift beneath me. "Are you taking it?" I asked, my throat tight. He looked at me then, his eyes raw. "I don't know. It depends." "On what?" I asked, my heart pounding. He reached across the table, taking my hand. "On you," he said simply. My breath caught, the world narrowing to his touch. His words, "Ethan, I love you." The words were quiet, but they hit like thunder, shaking me to my core. I don't know what that makes Megally. Bye? Whatever. But I know I want you. Wherever I go, I want you there. Tears stung my eyes, but I laughed, the sound shaky and real. "I love you too," I said, the words spilling out, weightless after years of holding them in. We kissed then, not tentative but sure, a promise sealed in the warmth of our apartment. It wasn't perfect, wasn't easy, but it was ours. We decided to go to Seattle together. I found a remote design job, and we packed up our lives, leaving Brooklyn behind. The move was chaotic, the new city unfamiliar, but with Jake beside me, it felt like home. We faced challenges, whispers from strangers, questions from friends, but we faced them together, hand in hand, unashamed. Years later, I'd look back on that night, the dare, the kiss, The secret that changed everything in Marvel at how one moment could rewrite a life. Jake wasn't straight anymore. Not in the way he'd been. But he wasn't defined by labels either. He was just Jake. And I was Ethan. And we were us. Building a life on love, courage, and the daring to prove it.